Hi again. This is my next entry in this video series on my kit car, my Factory 5 Coupe. As I record this, the weather actually is raining outside here in eastern Canada. We're on the shore and it's a week before Christmas. It's one of those wet, warm days outside, miserable actually. Great day to be inside here working on this thing. I'm not actually going to do any work today. I just wanted to just post a quick video about some of the issues that have popped up that I've quickly found solutions to. First of all, I'm very surprised how quickly things have gone along. I received my completion kit, which are basically all the components that you need to finish a Canadian kit, which are purchased and shipped separately. Purchased and shipped and received all those about 2 weeks ago. And things have moved along quite quickly. Primarily what is in the list of things that you need to finish your car, primarily what's in that is the suspension pieces, the fuel system, and the brake system. That's about it. Everything else pretty much came with the original kit that I purchased back in the summertime. It takes a long time to get this completion kit. In fact, I ordered mine, believe it or not, the end of August, and I received it the 1st of December. I purchased mine through Whitby Motor Cars, and Jeff at Whitby was great, so I have no complaints against them. Actually, I'm just a little frustrated with how long it took, because quite honestly, the speed things have burned along here, I probably would be go-karting by now, believe it or not. In fact, if I add up the amount of time I've put into this so far, I'm probably looking at a week's worth of work. That's working every day. I do work quickly. I did all the work pretty much myself, or my son did by himself. So it's really a one-man job. Even putting in the rear end, surprisingly, truly was a one-man job. It's not terribly heavy. It's about 225 pounds. And I used a jack, and I have this very, very cheap cradle, this wooden cradle that I bought at a discount tool shop, something like Harbor Freight, I think they call in the United States. Here's Princess Auto. I bought this, it's a moving cart. It's nothing more than 4 pieces of wood wrapped in carpeting on 4 casters. It's rated for about 600 pounds, and it was great to move things around. Not only the engine and transmission, but also the rear end. Slide those into place and pop all the pieces together. Generally speaking, the kit goes together very well. There's the odd tab or bracket that's slightly out, and sometimes you have to bend with I use a pry bar just to bend things into place, or to open up a bracket a bit to get 2 washers in. Sometimes you have to do that, but I expected that from the onset. There are 3 issues though with the car that I was hoping I wouldn't run across, but I did. But I quickly, fortunately, found solutions through them. First one I came across, because the suspension of the rear end's all done, the first one I did come across was the rear shocks. The rear shocks are designed, or the plans say for the car, to mount them in such a fashion that the body of the shock is up and the hat and spring are down. So the hat and spring go close to the axle, and the body's up on the body of the shock is up near the body of the car. I could not get mine to fit because the bracket, the shock mount bracket on the axle was striking the side of the spring, because the spring, if you can picture this, well actually I'll show it close up here. The spring of the body is wider, is girthier than the body of the shock. So the spring strikes things all around, and sometimes it requires cutting of the Panhard bar frame mount. So what I did is I just flipped the shocks over, and it gave me all the clearance I needed. Now there's going to be people out there that are going to challenge that, but I did a little research, and having installed not only Coney shocks, which I have here on my motorcycle, Penske shocks, Olin shocks, all the shocks I've installed in the past. As far as the function of the shock itself, I had no problem. I could flip them upside down. It did not affect the function, because air is not trapped within the shock. Okay, air is actually it shouldn't have any air in there. It should be sealed, and it's all liquid. or if it's gas fit, regardless. So it shouldn't affect the function of the shock. It will modify slightly or affect slightly the performance of the suspension because you increase, albeit slightly, but you do increase the unsprung weight. Okay, so unsprung weight is anything that hangs off the bottom of that shock mount. So as opposed to having that shock mount attached to the body and then have just the spring hat and spring down below, I'm flipping it over. So I'm probably increasing my unsprung weight somewhere in the vicinity of 5 pounds a side, so 10 pounds. I'm okay with that because it's going to save me a lot of jigging and jogging with a Sawzall. And before I get on to the next issue, that's something I'll tell you. You can get away, or I've gotten away so far without having to weld anything. I do need and do have a Sawzall, which is a reciprocating saw, construction reciprocating saw with metal blades on it. That's something that I do have and need, and I would recommend if you do consider buying one of these kits that you're going to need a good quality drill, whether it's cordless or not, and you're going to need a good quality reciprocating saw. Or, actually I should say good quality, you will need a reciprocating saw that works well and cut through metal. So a powerful reciprocating saw. Mine's 10 amp and it works great, okay? And my drill is 18.5 volt and it works great. That's a cordless. So I recommend those things, and but I think you could probably get away, unless you have a serious problem with your car, with your kit, you could probably get away without having to weld anything. Okay, in fact, when Factory 5 sells these kits to you, they'll even pitch that, so you don't need to weld, shouldn't have to weld anything, and that's generally speaking the case. If you make modifications to your car, you will probably have to do some welding, although welding is not terribly difficult. I haven't had to do any, but it's not difficult. You can buy a welder, a cheap stick welder or MIG welder or a flux in-core MIG welder for $200 or $150 here in Canada. So, the second problem though, moving on, that I have come across with this car is the steering column is off a little bit. And what it is there's two mounting points that hold the steering column, steering shaft. And one of them, it appears, that one sits under the dash, is about, by my measurements, a ½ an inch too far towards the passenger, okay? And the only reason I knew it was off is when I mocked up the dash aluminum, I noticed that it was just barely, the shaft was just barely fitting through the cutout for the steering wheel. So it's rubbing up against the side. So what I've decided to do is to slot the mounting bracket on the upper steering shaft mount, and also, if need be, when I do the install of the dash, is to open up that hole a little bit and perhaps use a piece of scrap aluminum to close up the other side if I find I can see the hole too far on one side. So that's not going to be a terrible issue. I thought about re-welding or re-bolting or rejigging some new bracket, cutting off the bracket that's on there, the steering upper steering shaft bracket, and re-welding a new one. But that's more rigmarole, and I'm always fearful about if I make a change, if the cutout, if the steering shaft's in the right place, it's just the cutout on the dash, and I'll need that extra space some point down the road, I'll have to cut that off and re-weld where it was. So better to modify what's on there as opposed to cutting off and replacing, okay? Lastly, the last problem I had so far, and what I'll talk about today, is the clutch pedal. I've installed the clutch pedal and the pedal box, and my clutch pedal is actually striking the outer 3/4 inch square frame bar that comes up alongside of the footwell from the front of the chassis. So I can get about 4 to 5 inches of throw in the clutch pedal, and then it strikes that bar. Problem is, well, actually, there's many ways to fix this. There's 3 big ways to fix it. One is you don't fix it at all and you live with it, and trust that you can adjust your clutch cable. I'm using a cable. You can adjust your clutch cable and clutch throw to operate on that short 4 inches of throw. I'm not so comfortable with that solution simply because when I do end up installing the clutch cable, if I don't have enough room, when the car will be done by then probably, or the foot box will be all paneled in, it's going to be very hard to modify that frame rail or the pedal. The second solution is to modify the pedal. The pedal has a webbing, and some guys have cut out about an inch or two of the webbing, the corner of the pedal, to allow it to swing farther closer into the bottom of the foot box, the back foot box, or I guess the front of the foot box, farther away from your foot. That's an option. For me, I did a little bit of research though, and there are some pedal systems, I'm not saying this one, but some pedal systems that fail with the cable actuated clutch. The pedals actually break off, and I don't want to do anything to these expensive pedals that would cause that sort of thing to happen, so I'd hate to be driving down the road and pop off a pedal. So I'm going with the third solution, and the third solution is to actually notch the frame rail. Now that gets a few people shaky when I say that. The reason being is because there's obviously that rail, that frame bar is welded into the chassis, and it serves some purpose more than just something to lean your foot against. Now that bar actually serves a safety purpose, or I perceive it does. So I'm assuming if you were to strike this car against something hard, like another car or a wall or a ditch, it would transfer some of the forward energy along the side of your foot rail up into the back of the car. So if I notch that bar, there's a good chance it will fold. If it's struck, if it's pressed in, it will fold in on itself, fold in towards my leg, or fold out, and allow that foot box to push up against my leg and perhaps break it. Or if somebody's to strike T-bone the side of the car, as opposed to taking the energy and sliding the front of the car over, it might collapse in onto the footwell. So my simple fix is to cut, and as you can see here in the close-up, is to cut a piece of 3/4 inch steel, like I bought at my local building supply dealer. Cut a piece about 10 inches long and bolt it in alongside as a supporting piece and paint it up. And that seems to have worked fine. Ideally, a weld would be better here, because it would effectively, a good weld would actually completely take the force that, or almost completely take the force that the original bar is designed to serve against. Anyway, other than that, the car has been a real joy. It goes together very nicely. Every little piece is, I would say, a night. So I took a night for the front suspension. I took a night for the brakes. I'll take an evening here to do the steering rack and steering rod. Both that there. Took a night for the rear end. Put that in to change the axles and put in the mount the rear end into the car. Took a night to get the engine packed in and into the chassis. So everything's going very, very quickly. It's becoming obvious that I think I'll have some challenges, although I'm very, very strong on automotive electric. I'm assuming that will take more than one night to do, to wire, and then another night to run the brake lines, maybe two, and then another night to run the fuel system. Hook that in and then run the lines. It might take 2 nights too. But generally speaking, assuming I hit no major hiccups, I should be go-karting within a month and a half or two. Which is a little quicker than I thought. However, I know the body is going to be more involved than I thought when I first got the kit too, just by looking at it. So overall, very, very pleased with the kit, which I think I say in every video, and I would recommend if you have any questions, if you're building one, this is a Coupe, if you have any questions about what you're building, don't hesitate to ask. Either comment on this video or send me a note through YouTube. Take care.